So we're now going to be thinking about what is known as the circle of confusion, which is in fact a real thing. Jot it down on your notes, circle of confusion, and it explains why aperture has an impact on depth of field. In this photograph, we can see the out of focus detail fairly sharp in this particular rendition. In this image, it's far more out of focus. Of course, there are 5 things that we've learned that impact depth of field. Aperture is the key one, and through these diagrams, we're going to explain why that is the case. So, notebooks out, you need to be able to do this drawing. I'm struggling to do it in Photoshop, so it may not be perfect, and hopefully we'll get back in the classroom and be able to work through some of these things. All right, I'm going to start with a straight line down here, which is going to designate the focal plane. This symbol should be fairly familiar to you. A straight line out here is going to designate the axis of the lens, AXIS. A single lens element or simple lens at the front here to designate the whole of the optical system, a compound lens, but we're just going to represent it by that one point here. And well, 2 little dots, but representing an aperture that is wide open at this point. So we could call this f2.0. Okay, 2.0. And I'm struggling drawing, as you can see. Now, we're looking sideways at a camera or and interested in the lens in particular. But imagine that we're photographing a person standing out here. They can be waving, looking to camera, and then in the background there is a tree. And this isn't a very good tree, I appreciate that, but imagine, and you've got to use your imagination, imagine that is a tree in the background. All right, so back to our thinking about light. Light emits from a single source. It bounces off the things that we see. As it bounces off the things that we see, it goes in every direction. A part of that light hits the front element of our lens. Imagine it as a single pinprick of light that spreads out in every direction, and some of that light hits the front element of our lens. And so I'm going to imagine that we're focused on the person, and light is bouncing off of this person, and this is where I'm going to be struggling with my straight lines. And that light has spread out from the single point in every direction, and some of that light has hit the front element of our lens, and as it hits our lens, it refracts or bends, and it comes to a single pinprick of light again at the focal plane. And because it's a single pinprick of light, it appears in focus. As it spreads out, this is like a disk of light that gets bigger and bigger, and it's that disk itself which is known as the circle of confusion. So we've got at f2.0, the light from the tree is coming and hitting our lens in exactly the same way, only it's coming into focus back here behind the focal plane. This is where the diagram is not going to be perfect. But here it's going to be a disk of light, and as opposed to the pinprick of light of the point where we're in focus. Imagine that we've taken the focal plane and we've turned it sideways, so we're now looking at the focal plane like this. And we can label this focal plane at 2.0. f2.0. And what we can see is in the middle a single pinprick of light and a disk of light around that represents what the tree would look like just in terms of light, that it's a disk of light, and because it's a disk of light, it's seen as being out of focus. Now we're going to imagine that we've done the same thing, but we've turned the aperture down to f16. So imagine that we've got the aperture much smaller here. And so here we can do focal plane at 16 Gosh, I'm sorry that this is so difficult with a mouse. Um, at this point, we'd still be focused on the person at exactly the same point, and the light would be coming into focus, becoming a pinprick of light in the same place. But because the aperture is smaller at the focal plane, the disk of light is going to be that much smaller on the focal plane, and we can draw that as a smaller disk of light. Because that disk of light is smaller, it's seen to be more in focus. Not completely in focus, of course, but more in focus. It's a control of depth of field, and that is the reason why aperture has an impact on depth of field. Hopefully we'll get in the classroom, we'll be able to explain more about this, but you do need to get the basic diagram here. I know it's pretty crude and the lines are not particularly straight. Imagine those are straight lines, and hopefully with a pen in hand you'll do a whole lot better than me with a mouse on Photoshop.